Welcome to our forum looking at funding for BAME organisations, and we're joined today by three speakers, two in person and one, well, I say in person, two here online, and we one by recording. We've got Nicholas Timms from the National Lottery Community Fund. We've got Sunir Feeder from Always Network, and we've got Susie Dye from Trust for London. And we've also got some resources, links from the Bailey network. And I think a straightforward program of, I'm going to ask Nicholas and then Sunir. I'm going to show you Susie's pre-recorded a little 5-minute section for us, and then I suggest we have questions and answers and any discussion that follows, if everyone's happy with that. So great. So can I ask Nicholas? Can I hand over to you?
Okay, I'm going to share my screen, so I'm hoping you can see that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great. Okay, so I'm just going to talk through the kind of funding that we're offering at the moment at the National Lottery Community Fund. I've got some slides, so I'll just go through it. So the funding is called the Coronavirus Community Support Fund, and that is funding that has been given to us by the government. So that was in May of this year. The government announced they're going to give us 200 million to give out to support communities through COVID-19. So the programme is to focus on funding projects and organisations helping communities through the COVID-19 pandemic. Just to sort of give you a bit of context, we have 200 million. That is for the whole of England. Unfortunately, we won't be able to fund everyone. But we're hoping that we can still make a huge difference with the amount of funding that we have. So it opened on the 22nd of May. Currently, we were given, I believe, until September to get the money out of the door and out to communities. What it actually means at the moment is that we have been so inundated with requests. There will be a possibility that we will be closing the fund earlier. We don't know when that is yet, but there will be an announcement made. So what I would sort of say is, if you are thinking of putting in an application, I would really recommend you do it as soon as possible to make sure that you're in the system. So I just keep checking the website to see if there's any updates. And if I hear anything, I will let Kevin know. And Kevin, if you could distribute that to people here in the group today or anybody else. So what we can fund, so we are supporting organisations who are supporting people who are at high risk from COVID-19. So that's organisations supporting people most likely to face increased demand and challenges as a result of the COVID-19 crisis, and organisations which connect communities and support communities to work together to respond to the COVID-19 outbreak. We can also help if your organisation is struggling financially because of the impact of COVID-19. We are seeing quite a lot of people coming to us who are losing a huge amount of income generation, and we have been able to support some organisations with their liquidity. If you are going to ask us for financial support, you still need to be delivering some kind of service to the community. So we are particularly looking for organisations who are supporting older people, disabled people, including people with long-term health conditions, BAME communities, and also LGBT+ communities who are facing very specific challenges during the current crisis. We're also looking to support organisations providing advice and support. So you can apply. There's a list here of organisations we can fund, voluntary and community organisations, registered charities or CIOs, partnership of organisations, as long as they're led by a volunteer or community organisation, not-for-profit companies, including companies limited by guarantee, and CICs with 2 or more directors. This is government funding, so with this funding, we cannot fund local authorities or schools. So there's 2 offers available. You can apply for a simple grant or a standard grant. So a simple grant is between 300 to 1,000 over 6 months. That would have been our kind of previous awards for all. And our standard grants, which are funding from over 10,000 up to 100,000. And again, this is just for a 6-month period. Make it very clear, you can only apply for one. You can only apply for simple or standard. You can't have both. If you are unsuccessful with your request, you cannot reapply. You can only apply once. It does say on our website that we will consider awarding larger grants at a longer time frame, but really those are just organisations that are working across England and working in more than one geographical area. We are not currently accepting any requests for funding that aren't COVID-19 related. When we know we will be reopening our awards for all and reaching communities, we will communicate that through the website, or I can let Kevin know that as well. So if you wish to apply, you can do this in 2 ways. You can do it online, which is our preferred way. All the kind of information that's on these slides is on the website, and I'll also give this presentation to Kevin as well. Or if you have difficulty doing it online, you can email us directly to the email address, which is London and South East Team at tnlcommunityfund.org.uk. And what we'll need to know is the basics, like the name of your project, where it'll take place, what you want to do, what difference your project will make, how much money you need, and obviously it says for how long, but it's actually just a maximum of 6 months. It can be for less than 6 months. And we really want to kind of know how your project, who will benefit from your project and how they've been affected by COVID-19. So when we receive your proposal, if it's something that we think we want to take forward, we will ask you for more information, which is really about kind of financial information. These are a lot of kind of conditions that have been put on us by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. So we have to do quite rigorous financial checks on organisations. So that's a very basic overview of what we're offering. It's simple or standard, so below 10,000 or over 10,000. Remember, you can only apply once. If you're unsuccessful, you can't reapply. And just remember, if you are thinking of applying, please do so as soon as possible. So I don't know if we want to do questions now, Kevin, or because I don't think
if anyone's got any specific questions for Nicholas, then yeah, by all means.
Can I just sort of add actually something about how the time frame for getting a decision? Currently, we have quite a large backlog of requests to assess. So I would say it's going to be a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks before you'll get a final answer.
4 to 6. That's still relatively quick, I suppose.
It is. Sometimes it's being a bit longer because everything that we decide we want to approve for funding has to be signed off by DCMS, and that is slowing things down quite a bit because it has to go to be checked by them.
Right. And people that had an existing relationship with the lottery, would already have had a communication. So is that right?
Communication about?
Well, from the lottery, or if they had applications in process at the point. That...
Yes, when in March we had to pause all the current RC applications that we were still processing. We have let people know that they've been paused, and when we open up reaching communities again, we will get in contact with them and continue to process their applications. We were at the beginning offering current grant holders a grant increase, but we have to do that now through an application process, not just doing an uplift on people's grants.
Okay, and this is probably an unfair question, but any idea when the sort of reaching communities might come back?
The honest answer is, I don't know.
No, fair enough, fair enough. Anyone else got a question for Nicholas? So if not, then we will leave it there. Thanks very much, Nicholas. That was really, really useful. And I'd like to introduce Sunir Fida from Always Network, which I don't know a great deal about. You're a newish organisation supporting Muslim organisations. We've been promoting your newsletter, but over to you, Sunir. And Nicholas, if you could just stop sharing your screen, and then...
Good point. Hold on. I'm trying to work out how to do that.
I think at the top there's a...
Whereabouts is it on the top? Ah, hold on.
That's it. That's it.
Is it gone?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And do you mind? I'm going to have to jump out now, Kevin.
Okay.
I'll share those slides with you.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks very much for that, Nicholas. That's been really, really useful.
All right then.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Sunir, over to you. The floor is yours.
Well, first, actually, just to say thank you for inviting me. And I don't have anything as snazzy as Nicholas did. So I'm just going to have a quick chat about just, what we do. So as Kevin mentioned, we are relatively new. I guess I'll just tell you the story of where we started. So back in 2017, our founder was actually working at a London-based grant-giving foundation. And what she noticed was that there was a real sort of distinct lack of applications coming through from Muslim community organizations. And that was surprising, I think, to her at the time, especially given the level of, for want of a better word, actually a disadvantage that the community was being affected by. For example, I think from amongst faith groups, I think British Muslims have actually got the highest level of unemployment. I think we're overrepresented in the prison population. I think 3 times the national average, over 3 times the national average actually. And I think 24% of the British Muslim community actually falls into the lowest of the socioeconomic classes of being either long-term unemployed or having never worked. And in all honesty, it's fine and dandy to be quoting facts and figures and theorizing about reasons why, but the reality is, as COVID has really clearly demonstrated for us, that this is a real lived reality on the ground. And so with that as a backdrop, our founder went and started speaking to these small sort of community organizations, and the recurring theme that came up from these groups was that they actually didn't know who funders were. Some of them had never heard of the sort of funding landscape, and they didn't even know what it was that the funders were doing. And so in looking for a resolution, she wanted to take a bit of action and decided to actually set up a Meet the Funders event, where the community organizations were sort of invited to meet mainstream funders. We had sort of Tudor Trust there, we had Cloth Workers Foundation, we had Aziz Foundation. There was, a number of funders, came and connected really well. We had, a really well attended event. Thankfully, it was really successful and we had some great feedback, and that was basically where the Always network was essentially born. And in essence, what we do is we aim to bridge the gap between funders and grassroots Muslim community organizations. So on a very practical level, what we do is we'll host an annual Meet the Funders event, for example, where we do invite a lot of mainstream funders, just have a chat with people. They have got any questions there, meet them face to face, start building that relationship and take it forward from there. And also throughout the rest of the year, what we'll do is we host, other events. For example, we had a digital marketing event, and we also had a wildly popular sort of bid writing seminar. Pre-COVID as well, actually, we'd hosted a really successful, actually, it was really lovely, that event, where we held a convening event for small charities to meet each other so that they could sort of mingle and learn from each other, and also, build support networks. I think going back to the COVID response, we've been actively sort of publicizing funding pots as and when they become available. Our website is updated regularly. We also send out a newsletter, like Kevin mentioned. We send that out regularly, and also we were very privileged this during the COVID situation, actually, and eternally grateful to some really highly experienced bid writers who came forward and approached us to offer their services free of charge to the organizations that we support. There was a great success story recently where there was this little tiny community center that was pivoting and starting to sort of deliver a food bank as well as like a food delivery service, and they were able to gain, I think it was £5,000 recently, actually, from a pot, just from the help from the bid writers. So that was excellent. I'd say at the moment we're young. We are young. We're a volunteer-led group, so all of us have day jobs, and we're quite privileged to have a mix of different sort of experience on our board. For example, I myself work in my full-time job, my day job, at a funder, at a national funder, actually. And what we're looking to do for the future is, looking to host basically these regular informal chats with funders. So we're just hoping to build that relationship with people. And I think for us, one of the biggest things and a really important thing that we feel like it's worth noting is that we recognize that as a team and as an organization, we're really quite uniquely placed to be able to challenge the community from within the community. So, my esteemed colleague Nicholas, he left and just now, and he was from the lottery. And actually, traditionally speaking, from within the Muslim community organizations, there's been a traditional aversion actually to accepting lottery funding due to sort of certain faith-held presumptions. And what we've been able to do is, being part of the community, is actually start to challenge that thinking and open up that sort of thinking and have those discussions, really. We also really believe that our core role in essence is actually listening to communities. So we want to listen to what's happening on the ground and to advocate for the great work that they're doing at the funder level. And the reality is that some of us are really privileged to be sitting around that table with a number of different funders. We're privileged to be in that position, and we recognize that there's a real responsibility that comes with that. And what we're hoping to do is benefit people from within those systems. There's great sort of, we all believe that there's a great amount of, there's so much passion and energy that's there in the frontline groups and in the work that's being done on the ground. It's amazing. And we want to be able to facilitate getting frontline voices and groups into rooms with funders and getting them to talk to them and amplifying their voices and advocating for them. And, all of our work is sort of focused around that. And just before I sort of just finish up, I went to an event yesterday, and it was an amazing group of highly motivated and fantastic grassroots organizations working at the front line. And one of them left me with a thought which actually had quite an impact on me, and I've been thinking about it all night, so I'm going to share it now. And she actually spoke about, in BAME communities, focusing on the deficit model is just not beneficial to any of us. focusing on deficit model is not beneficial to any BAME communities whatsoever. And we should instead be celebrating actually what our communities are and what they bring. And, you know, celebrating the fact that actually there's so much care for each other, and especially in times like this with COVID and when things get tough, you know, there's a real care that does come out of it. And, you know, how we need to actually focus instead on hope for the future, in the joy that, you know, we can bring, and bring that as a collective sort of narrative forward. And I feel that actually, you know, I must say thank you to Kevin actually, and you know, the team for bringing together places like this, because you know, it's really important that we all hear each other's voices, and that's where we start from. And I would say that also, yeah, thank you for having me. And if anyone is interested in any of the work, you know, I'm really happy to sort of talk about it, and I'll obviously be leaving my contact details with Kevin, and hopefully if anyone wants them, we can share them out. Definitely. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Sunir. That was really interesting, and really I'm sure a lot of that chimed with a lot of people, and especially this emphasis at the end on building on strengths rather than focusing on deficits. I think that's something we can all agree with there, and it's a really positive way of looking at things. So thanks very much. Do we have any questions for Sunir that people want to raise right now? And if not, we can have one more speaker and then we can get into a discussion. And Sunir, obviously, as you say, we'll share the contact details, the website. We have been promoting the newsletter, linking it into our newsletter. So hopefully people have seen that. And could you just tell us a little bit more about the networking opportunities? Are they sort of regular, or are they changing as things develop?
So obviously things have changed a lot for us, and we had a whole program of events actually sort of ready to go before COVID sort of hit, and we're sort of now shifting with what funders' diaries have shifted. So we are hoping to actually start those Zoom events and the Zoom calls relatively soon again. We are also organising an event currently with the lottery, and obviously those will all be online. On the regular events, what we're hoping to do is keep it as small groups, and so have, say, for example, 5 to 10 people at a time, just sitting down and having a chat with the funder and just asking them about, you know, any questions they might have, any sort of application questions, or even actually just bigger questions about what's going on in the organisation itself and what they'll be looking to fund in the future. So that sort of thing. We do regularly update all of this on our website, and also I just wanted to I feel like it's actually important to just note that what we have recognised actually from the COVID sort of issue and the response, actually the impact has been really, really huge, and it's been felt by so many different groups and so many different people, particularly in the BAME communities. So, you know, one thing I would like to sort of just, you know, make clear is that whereas we focus on the Muslim community organizations, we actually are also sort of helping other organizations that work with the Muslim community in different ways, or actually just BAME communities as well. At the moment, we're sort of hoping to just step into a role where you know, support we feel like is needed. So, you know, we're offering that support to everyone at the moment.
Great, thanks very much. Thank you for joining us today. If no one has any burning questions for Sunir at this point, then I will move on to our last speaker, Susie Dye. Now, Susie is not with us in person, but she's pre-recorded a 5-minute segment. So if you bear with me, I will get that up. Just give me 1 second. Now, the only thing I'll say about this is it's a little bit quiet. I've got it turned up as loud as it will go my end. So you may have to turn it up your end if it's too quiet for you. And then just remember to turn yourself down a bit at the once it's finished.
Sorry, just a quick one, Kevin. Susie Dye, is she from Trust for London?
So Susie Dye is from Trust for London, and she is the person who covers geographically the Camden area. So she's basically the first point of contact. Yes, they have other grants officers, and some of them specialize in different areas, but I think Susie's the person to go to first, and if she thinks another grant officer is better suited, then she will pass you on.
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, here we go.
Trust for London, and I'm the contact point at the Trust for organisations based in Camden. Trust for London is a charity with a mission to tackle poverty and inequality in London. We're a large grant maker, making around 100 grants a year, and a mix of smaller grants up to £60,000 over 3 years, and larger grants which average about £80,000 in total. We also published a lot of detailed data about poverty in London on our website, which is www.trustforlondon.org.uk. I'm away this week, so this video is to share a few thoughts for BAME organisations in Camden thinking of applying to the Trust, and Kevin from VAC has given me a few questions to answer, so let's see how we get on. First question, what are funders looking for when BAME organisations apply to them? I would mention two things. Firstly, our funding guidelines say what we will and won't fund. We publish these on our website, and at Trust for London in Camden, we're particularly interested in funding campaigning work or advice work by user-led organisations with a turnover below £100,000. And everything we do is about poverty in London. Secondly, if the work fits our guidelines, we look at the capacity to manage a grant. So, for example, that there are at least 3 trustees or directors, and that the budget is in proportion with the size of the organisation. If those things look okay, we will often come and see and find out more. Next question. How do Trust for London's values influence practice when funding BAME organisations? Good question. So the Trust has been funding small and grassroots organisations for a long time. We know that BAME organisations are often the first point of contact for people needing help. We welcome organisations who are able to provide advice and support in different languages, and who act as a bridge between communities and to mainstream services. We also value organisations that are led by people from the communities they serve, so users are involved in designing and delivering services. And finally, we are committed to social change, so that if people are to move out of poverty, change isn't needed at local or national government level, so that other people don't fall into the trap. Third question, what advice would you give to a small BAME organisation seeking funding right now? Yeah, interesting times that we're living in. In a way, I hope this would be a good time to be applying. Awareness of disadvantage and systemic racism and bias has never been higher. So funders are maybe checking some of our assumptions in positive ways that hopefully will mean that more money does go to BAME organisations. I think also now the COVID emergency means a lot of funding is being made available jointly through, for example, the London Community Response Fund. So there are opportunities to apply. At the same time, we know the emergency is putting huge pressure on your services. So tell us what you see and what you know, as you're the expert in that. And we will hopefully learn from what you're telling us. If you do find that you're applying and it's just not getting through. Ask for feedback. At the trust, for example, we will often provide more detail if somebody follows up on a rejection. I would say do apply to more than one fund. The success rates at even the best funders are about 1 in 3. And so also do make use of services like Voluntary Action Camden, who do offer advice and fundraising. They're there to help. So that's enough for now. Do read our guidelines, have a chat with VAC, and yeah, if you think what you do might fit Trust for London, but you have questions, you can get in touch with me or colleagues using the details on our website. Thank you and best of luck.
Right, hopefully that was useful and interesting. And I think really the key thing I always take away is the importance of actually talking to the grants officers, and it's really good, I think, when they make themselves known so that you know who to talk to, because you never, even when you get the feedback, I always find there's 2 kinds of feedback. There's one where they've understood it, but they don't really want to fund you. And the other kind is where you realize they just haven't quite got it. And I think that's where it's really important to talk to their grants officers until they understand what you're talking about, or until you find a way of saying it in a better way. So we've heard from Nicholas from the National Lottery Community Fund, from Samir from Always Network, and Susie Dye from Trust for London. So now I'm going to open the floor to questions, discussion, comments, really anyone who wants to say something.
Yes, Kevin, it's me again.
Sure, go ahead.
So for the Trust for London, is there a deadline of their application process, or is that open throughout the year?
As I understand it, they've also switched into a kind of COVID-19 response.
Okay.
So at the moment, I think they're rolling deadlines, and I think Susie didn't make it quite clear, but as I understand it, they may point you towards the London community response.
Okay.
I would just mention there, sorry Kevin, I just had a quick look on their website, and it says that their closing dates for applications are actually 6th of October 2020, 1 PM. And the other one is 2nd of February 2021 at 1 PM.
Right.
Thank you, Samir.
Good, thank you. Thanks for looking that one up. Okay, other thoughts? Anyone want to chip in with anything? Donna?
I was just going to add really to what Susie said about VAC providing support with fundraising. We also hold an awful lot of data. So if you are fundraising, we can help with evidence, particularly through the COVID situation. Just an example of that, through the social prescribing and care navigation service, we've got real-time sort of our staff work into a database. So we've got real-time graphs emerging on what is happening. And at the peak of, which was sort of April, halfway through March through April, we were getting referrals to the community links bit of the service, which VAC host, up to around 70% of people self-referring or being referred by other voluntary sector organisations who were finding people on the ground through food delivery particularly. Those were from BAME communities. And some of those people we had to persuade to go to their doctor. So that tells you a lot, I think, about COVID response and some of those communities potentially not connected into traditional healthcare, and also the kind of distress, that really high percentage, but coming to a community organisation really, where also our frontline referral staff speak local languages. That obviously makes a huge difference. So we do have that kind of data, and we also have sort of case studies and testimonials about that. So if you do, you know, get in touch and talk to me if you want to put together evidence behind your fundraising bids, if you're delivering those frontline services. We know what the demand is, we you know, and we have a sort of good overview of the population where people are coming through that service particularly. But VAC also holds other data about groups and things in the borough. So if you're a Camden group fundraising and you need evidence, have a chat with us.
Yes, thanks, Donna. Thanks for that reminder. We're in the process of redesigning our website. I know sometimes it's difficult to find what you want when you get there, but we have got a section which is all about, it's a sort of facts and figures, and it's hopefully it really helps in when you're writing a bid. And then if you've got specific questions, you can ask us. I think what I'll do is put as much of that into the information after today's event so that it's all in one place. Anything else? Other questions, comments? Anyone want to raise anything?
Kevin?
Zubair, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a question. It's really for Sunia. It's a really interesting intervention that you're doing in terms of Muslim communities. The question about Muslim organizations and communities not applying to the national lottery, that's been a long-standing issue, and it is a barrier, and it's just how we overcome that. And I just wanted to pick your brains about that, how we do that, because it is a huge pot that potentially can be utilized by our communities, but you know, that barrier is a distinct one, and it's one that is quite hard over the years. It's been hard to overcome.
Sunia, what do you think? I mean, what's your take on that? Do you think that Always Network is sort of making that difference?
Yes, I think so. It's organizations like Always that, you know, could pivot between the community and organizations like the National Lottery, and it's very good that VAC is working with organizations like Always to make inroads, especially at a time when we are trying to be positive as BAME communities to overcome the inequalities that we all face during this period. And it's one that I think should be promoted, and we should, you know, as much as possible, work in cooperation with them.
Well, thank you for those. Well, thank you for the question. I think, well, first, just as a bit of background, the reason that, say, for example, some people from the Muslim community have had a traditional sort of aversion to lottery funding is actually because there's sort of an understanding that it comes from a gambling pot, and there's also sort of an understanding that it comes from an interest pot, and both of those are not allowed necessarily in the faith. What we have been saying at the Always Network is that actually we are attempting to help organisations and community groups to make informed decisions. So we're not here necessarily to tell them you have to take it, because that's a preference for someone to make, and you know, we hope that we treat everyone with respect and dignity, and you know, that they have choices to make themselves. But what we're hoping to do actually is say, you know, we understand that we are also from, you know, a similar background and community. I've worked at community organisations as well as at funders, and those conversations are happening. And all I'm hoping to do, and we're hoping to do at Always Network, is actually just highlight what are the differences in opinion out there, and actually hope that once people have come to our event, for example, that we're hoping to host in the future, at some point in the next couple of months, is that they'll be able to make an informed decision, I think, from there. And I think that having that two-pronged approach is basically the way in which we hope to take on any challenges that we face, in actually saying that it's not just about talking to the community and you know, sort of trying to build understanding there, or just operating in different opinions, you know, what's going on there. But equally, we would actually be in a position, and we have that privilege, and we accept that it's a responsibility of working at funders. So what we can do then as well through our networks is we're able to approach those funders and say directly, hey, this is what we're hearing from our communities. They're saying they don't want access to this money for these reasons. Is there any way of ensuring that the government money is kept separately from the lottery's money, for example? And can we then, provide a solution for that? And I think I feel like we are really uniquely placed in that we are straddling both those worlds, and it is just trying to basically amplify what it is we're hearing on the ground. Just at that sort of level, and that's basically where we're coming from. And it is, I must say, from a real place of deep and profound respect for all frontline workers and staff and groups, because we honestly believe that the work you do is fantastic and it's amazing, and you should all be really proud of what you're doing. And if we can support that in any way, shape or form possible, that's what we hope to do anyway.
Great, thanks. And I've got a couple of questions. I've got Gemma first, and was someone else waving? And I just wanted to chip in before that I think it is a real sort of dilemma. I mean, the whole charity sector, often the people who want to give the money, there are all sorts of moral objections. They might be, oligarchs, dodgy billionaires. You hear of some crazy examples, and of course the Quakers were very against taking lottery money, and then I know they had a huge debate in the mid-noughties and decided to change their stance and are no longer objecting to taking lottery money, but have never made a lottery application. So it's an interesting one. Gemma, you had a question.
Yes, I was just going to say that because I'm a Quaker.
Okay, interesting.
Yes, so we have a big problem with gambling, but I've also worked for the lottery, and I think it's important actually that lottery funding isn't a panacea. I think it's the way it works, its bureaucracy, and the way it's very target driven and bureaucratic. Is not actually suitable for all small organizations. So I just like to say, there are other funders out there that are more partnership focused. So I'm just saying you can think beyond the lottery, like Trust for London, like Garfield Weston Foundation. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Sorry, I was just going to ask actually, because I'm interested in hearing just from any frontline groups that are here actually, and what your experiences might have been of approaching funders.
Gosh, Sonia, you're going to really start a war off now, aren't you?
Feel free to be. Fine. It's just,
I'm trying to be on my good behaviour today.
Rafa, you're not. Go for it.
So recently, around about, I would say last December, I did put in a big application bid for 4 daughters, and it was for 3 years funding of salaries. And unfortunately, they completely forgot to get back to us. So I had to chase them in regards to the decision. And the decision was just, well, it was very brief. It's something that Kevin actually said, and I was actually in agreement that it's either that they understand, but they just don't give you a proper reply, or they just completely don't want to understand. It's very heartbreaking when you take so long in deriving these applications, and then you just, you just put up for upset because you know that, okay, maybe it's because we're BAME. Now, the reply that I actually received back was that, we had 200 applications and your application wasn't strong enough. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But now can you actually give me some details in regards to why it wasn't strong, given the fact that government guidelines do state that BAME organisations are high at risk. So from now that anything, we'll need that money. But I wasn't given a reply. So it was quite demotivating. It is a large funder. I was asking for, obviously their maximum fund. So obviously I'll be looking at things that, you know, did I go wrong somewhere? Or, you know, it comes down to that mere fact, whenever I go for big funders, they don't want to fund us. And I'm really starting to feel demotivated in just going forward with smaller funds. Or I've made this point very, very clear previously before in so many events, that if it wasn't for COVID-19, as a BAME organisation, we would never be put on the map. It's very heartbreaking to think this, and I don't want to actually believe this, but I am coming down to that thought. I'm starting to agree with it. But yeah, it was quite demotivating. As I said, I just wanted to put that out there. And if, you know, anyone does have any links with 4 daughters, it'd be really nice for them to actually just give an understanding, you know, given the work and given the regulations and the guidelines from the government about how BAME organisations should now be put on the map and actually be given the choice of, you know, being the first charities or organisations that should actually have access to mainstream funding. But hey ho, you know, you know, it just goes on. So yeah, that was just my final thoughts for today. I'm not going to cause no more war for you, Kevin. I always do cause a problem when I'm on events, so I'll just stay stumped now from here.
No, this is a space where you can say what you think. It's fine.
Kevin, on a more serious point, from what Raf was saying, yeah, Raf, didn't you apply for a fund that you didn't necessarily think that you'd get any money from, but you did, about your arts?
Yes.
You did it with, yeah, that was really interesting intervention that you did with the Arts Council or Arts Forum or something?
Yes, it was for the Arts Council.
Yeah.
And I was told that they were very, very hard funders to get through to, but I actually went in as a non-national portfolio organisation, because we don't really deal with the arts. We do obviously little aspects of arts itself, but we're not mainstream arts based. And I was very, very happy to know that they actually supported us, and they've given us 6 months funding for salaries due to COVID-19. So yes, well done, Arts Council, and thank you very much, whoever's out there, the guardian of Arts Council. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great, and it shows also the value of, you know, being imaginative and maybe, you know, thinking of different funders to go to and framing your work in different ways.
I think, Kevin, it's not even about being imaginative anywhere. It's about being desperate.
Yes, we can all identify with that. Absolutely. Julia.
No, I think it brings up some of the issues of, you know, and problems that have been around for years, is that, you know, the funders still, everyone has their own process, and although they sort of ask the same questions, it always feels like however long you've been writing funding bids, it's still an enormous amount of work to write a funding bid. And, you know, and I know things like the London Community Response Fund is helpful funders coming together, but it's still, it just still feels really hit and miss. And, you know, I know another charity I'm involved in, you know, we put in a whole load of funding bids, and last week heard from 3 of them, and, you know, 2 were successful and 1 wasn't. And what's the difference? You know, it's just, you know, recognizing that funders have their own priorities and their own ways of doing things, and there's no sort of scientific objective way of you know, bidding and being certain, and you know, and I think it's right, we never get enough detailed feedback, and you know, everyone understands that every fund is oversubscribed, but actually the feedback that you get rarely helps you with a future application. So a bit of a rant, but
no, that's a good point, and it's interesting, the London Community Response, whether that's sort of forced a whole load of funders to accept a common application process, because I'm old enough to remember when the London funders actually paid a consultant. This is going back a long time, in the at the end of the last century, and they spent a lot of money to try and come up with a common application form, and in the end they binned it. They just couldn't do it, and actually COVID has forced them to, you know, actually do that. So it would be quite interesting. I mean, maybe organizations, I mean, Sunir, maybe yours and others can put pressure on them, because it shows it can be done, and potentially that takes some of the pressure off of us. Because as you say, Julia, it's so much work. Every single application seems like a completely fresh piece of work. Sorry, a bit of a rant from me there.
Absolutely, yeah, I find that too.
And sometimes,
remember the
Kevin,
days of the single application form.
Yes, Julia, yeah, I agree.
sometimes, Kevin, it's not even the application, it's all the documents you have to provide, and organizations don't seem to have that, and that's a big issue, like accounts and, you know, safeguarding and all sorts of stuff like that. So that application they can do, it's just other documents, getting those together. And I know that we got a lot of resources on our website helping with that as well.
But yes, even with those resources, you're right, it's a lot of work for each organization, and yeah. So we're coming up to 12 o'clock, so I'm going to bring things to a close now. I'd like to thank our speakers, especially Sunir, who's still with us, and also to Nicholas and Susie as well. Thank you to all of you for joining us today and your contributions. We will put up all the things that have been mentioned today, the presentations, the links to Always Network. We've also got a link to the Ubeli Network, and some other useful information. We'll get that up on our website, and then we'll email that over to you probably Monday now. I'm away on Friday, but we'll get that to you as soon as possible. So thank you very much.